What's up, my growth seekers? Welcome to another powerful episode of Where Growth and Greatness Align. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Gilliam, and I've got a treat for you today. If you're tired of feeling like you're living in the shadow of your potential, stuck in a mental cage that you can't seem to break free from, then this episode is for you. Today, we're talking all about the quest for your unfiltered essence, that powerful path where you get to shed all the layers of should, could, and musts, and finally show up as the real, unapologetically you. I know how frustrating it is to feel like you're living a life that doesn't feel true to who you are. I've been there too, feeling like I was carrying around this invisible weight of expectations, self-doubt, and mental clutter that made my every decision feel like it had to pass some imaginary test. But guess what? You don't have to keep carrying that weight. It's time for you to break free and step into your authentic power. Yes. So, if you're ready to take that first step toward becoming the person you were always meant to be, let's dive in. Before we get started, a quick shout out to syncsouls.mykajabi.com, the platform where you can find exclusive tools, resources, and programs to help you along your own personal growth journey. You don't want to miss out on these life-changing resources, so go check it out after the episode. All right, now let's get to it. Here's a question for you. Have you ever felt like you're just stuck? Like there's this invisible force, this invisible chain holding you back from being who you really are? You know that quiet voice inside your head that keeps saying things like, you're not good enough, you're too old, it's too late to change, or one of my least favorite, you don't have time for this. We've all heard those voices before, right? Yes, and I'm willing to bet that at least one of those voices has kept you from pursuing your dreams or something that truly excites you. Well, it's time to silence those voices and those chains and break free from the fear, doubt, and that negative self-talk. Because when you finally let go of those mental barriers, you can start living the life you were meant to live. Yes, a life that feels authentic and true to who you are. You just need to learn how to identify, confront, and ultimately break free from the beliefs, fears, and stories that have been keeping you locked in a mental prison. Are you ready? Let's talk about how we can break those chains together. All right, let's dive right on in head first. Would you agree that just about all of us have experienced family expectations growing up? Yeah, those unspoken pressures, the hopes and the dreams that others place on us, they feel like this heavy backpack we're forced to carry around. But here's what's so deep. No one ever gave us the instructions for what to do with it, and they expected us to just keep walking with no concern about how much it was weighing us down. It's amazing when you think about it how restrictive life can be growing up. We're often told what's best for us, what will make us successful, and what we should become without ever being asked what our passions and desires were. Whether it was our parents, siblings, and even extended family, they all had their own ideas who we were supposed to be and what we're supposed to do. Sometimes it's a direct ask, like when your mom says, "You're going to be a doctor, just like your uncle." And sometimes it's more subtle, like the quiet looks of disappointment when we go off the beaten path. Either way, it's like we've inherited a set of goals and aspirations that aren't really our own. Let's think about this for a moment. Family expectations can sometimes feel like a roadmap that was drawn for you before you even learned how to navigate life. The only problem is that map doesn't always align with your destination or desires. Yeah, man, the weight of these expectations is real. It's like having this nagging thought that creeps in when you're about to take a leap of faith toward your dreams, but hear that little voice whispering, "What if this isn't what they wanted for me?" We allow self-guilt and fear of disappointing our loved ones or being labeled a failure if your journey doesn't mirror theirs. It's that internal tug of war between your own desires and the perceived need to please, perform, or live up to someone else's vision of your life. But here's a twist for you. Living under the weight of these kinds of expectations doesn't just keep us stuck. Nah, it stops you from experiencing life as your true self. Instead of making decisions based on what you want, you end up playing a role, often in a script you didn't even write. And the longer you carry this weight, the more it drags on your spirit, your passion, and your joy. But guess what? The real liberation comes when you give yourself permission to drop that backpack. To acknowledge that, yes, you may have been conditioned to follow a certain path. But that path isn't set in stone. You have the power to rewrite the narrative. It doesn't mean you have to completely cut ties with family expectations. We all know how that can go over. But it does mean you begin to take ownership of your journey, honor your authentic desires, and to give yourself the space to be who you truly are, regardless of what anyone else thinks. So while family expectations can feel like a heavy burden, it's also a call for you to take action. It's time to redefine success on your terms. And when you do that, you'll be free to walk your own path with purpose and clarity. Let's shift gears for a moment and look at perfectionism and how it plays a role in robbing us of our authenticity. Here's an ideal way of looking at perfectionism as a sneaky little gremlin who whispers in your ear telling you you're not good enough unless it's flawless. It's like your shiny armor that seems to protect you. Nah, what it's really doing is weighing you down like a ton of bricks, preventing your movement and keeping us trapped in a cycle of constant striving and never feeling satisfied. I can see how this could be a conundrum. Never seeing anything as good enough, what a scary place. So at first glance, perfectionism in a successful life might seem like a good thing. After all, society often equates perfection with achievement. We're told that if we want to be seen as successful, we need to be the best in our careers, relationships, health, finances, you name it. And it makes sense, right? The more polished, the more flawless, the more impressive we look, the more we can tick off the boxes of success. Totally disregarding how not only unrealistic that kind of thinking is, but limits the notion that failure is a part of success. In all honesty, there's no such thing as success without failure. But here's the catch. Perfectionism isn't just about getting things done right. It's about needing them to be perfect every single time. And while striving for excellence is one thing, but keep in mind, perfectionism is a beast that never stops demanding more. It's that voice that continuously tells you that your work, your effort, your performance is never quite enough. It's that nagging sense that no matter how much you accomplish, the finish line always seems to be out of reach. Doesn't that feel like a dirty little trick that our mind is playing on some of us? For many people, especially those who are high achievers, perfectionism sneaks into all aspects of life. It's the idea that your work needs to be pristine, your social media posts need to be flawless, your house needs to look like it's straight out of a magazine, and that you must be the perfect partner, friend, or parent. This creates a pressure that is both exhausting. In the pursuit of perfection, we may find ourselves constantly overworking, never taking breaks, or even avoiding risks because we fear failure or mistakes. Check out Mia, for example. On the outside, it looks like she's got it all covered. A high-powered job in a successful startup, a beautiful apartment, and a well-curated life on Instagram. Everyone looks at her and thinks, wow, she's made it. But Mia is also struggling with a deep sense of inadequacy because of her perfectionism. Every email she sends feels like a final exam, every meeting a performance. She spends hours on tasks that could take minutes, constantly rechecking her work because she's terrified of making even the smallest of mistake. Despite her outward success, she feels overwhelmed, stuck in a never-ending cycle of self-criticism. Perfectionism has created a toxic loop where even when she achieves her goals, she's left feeling emotionally drained and unable to celebrate her wins. What's even crazier is that perfectionism doesn't just exist in the work you do, but in the way you view yourself as well. For many high achievers, perfectionism can manifest as an internal narrative where you're constantly chasing an ideal version of yourself, be it the perfect body, the perfect career, or the perfect relationships. And no matter how hard you work toward these ideals, there's always a voice inside that says, you can do better, you should do better, you're not enough. It's this internal critic that never shuts up. The worst thing about perfectionism is while seemingly a desire to do things well can hold us back from living authentically. If you're so focused on perfecting the outside, the external markers of success, you risk neglecting the inside. Your true desires, your emotional needs, and your mental health. You get so caught up in chasing an ideal that you forget to ask yourself, what do I really want? What makes me happy? Not because it looks good to others, but because it feels right for me. Now, the truth is, perfectionism isn't the friend of success. It's its biggest saboteur. It tells you that you need to be perfect to be worthy, when in fact the key to success and happiness often lies in embracing your imperfections. It's about showing up as your genuine self, flaws and all, and understanding that mistakes are just part of the journey. Perfection doesn't allow for failure, and yet failure is where the real growth happens. It's where we learn, adjust, and evolve. Here's the bottom line. Perfectionism in a successful life isn't sustainable. A lot of things, but at what cost? Your your mental well-being, your relationships, and your happiness? At some point, the pursuit of perfection must give way to the pursuit of authenticity. Real success isn't about achieving some flawless image. It's about showing up as the best version of yourself, imperfections and all, and knowing that the real win is in the journey, not just the destination. It's time to ditch the weight of perfection and embrace something more powerful: progress over perfection. The world needs your imperfections more than it needs some unattainable ideal. Here's another story for you. Take Michael. For example, he's a talented architect who'd spent years designing buildings that looked great on paper, but he bared this emptiness. There was a dark void in his life. He appeared to be this successful person on the outside, but deep down, he felt this overwhelming sense of emptiness. His mind was always cluttered with should and musts. I should be grateful for this career. I must maintain this lifestyle for my family. He kept trying to convince himself that everything was fine, but something didn't feel right. Here's where things get interesting. Michael's breakthrough came from an experience he refers to as breaking the chains through silent retreat. It happened during a 3-day silent retreat. Yeah, sounds a little woo-woo, but stick with me. It wasn't until he got away from the constant noise of life is when he experienced a moment of clarity. His mind stopped buzzing, and his inner voice came through loud and clear. That voice spoke loud and saying, "You're not meant to build commercial buildings. You're meant to design sustainable homes." And with that realization, the chains started cracking. He made the bold decision to leave his well-paying, stable job and focus on building tiny homes and community-focused living spaces. Talk about a game changer, right? The shift in his life was profound, and it all started with him clearing the mental clutter so he could hear his own inner voice. Let's talk about mental clutter for a second. Imagine trying to focus on something important while your mind is playing 10,000 different radio stations at once, and none of the reception to the stations are very clear. You've got worries about work, doubts about your abilities, fears about the future, guilt over the past, and let's not forget what's for dinner tonight. That, my friends, is the definition of mental clutter. Now, I want to talk about how mental clutter affects you in the real world. Okay, think about Rebecca, a creative director who struggled to make even the simplest decisions about her projects. Why? Because her mind was so full of unresolved thoughts, past criticisms, and future anxieties that every new decision felt like trying to push a boulder up a hill. This is what psychologists call cognitive load paralysis. Your brain becomes so overloaded with stuff, it just shuts down. Think about the last time you found yourself staring at the fridge for 20 minutes, unable to decide what to make for dinner. That's mental clutter at work, folks. And here's another mind twister about mental clutter. It doesn't just make you indecisive now, it triggers your body's fight or flight responses. This constant stress can lead to burnout, irritability, and emotional exhaustion. Just ask Arlene, a high school teacher who found herself snapping at her students over the tiniest things. Why? Because her mind was running on overdrive, with worries about her personal life, her finances, and everything in between. Now, let's talk about the good stuff. Okay, the path to freedom and clearing your mental clutter. Okay, so are you ready to learn how to clear that mental clutter and free yourself? All right, here we go. First off, it's not a one-time event. It's like cleaning your house. You don't just clean it once and never do it again. Mental hygiene is a daily practice. The key is for you to create a process to capture your thoughts, evaluate their relevance, and release the ones that aren't serving you. The CLEAR protocol is a great way to start. Capturing your thoughts in a journal. Label them. Is it actionable? Is it emotional? Is it unnecessary? And then decide what to do with them. The idea is to stop carrying around all that mental junk that you don't need. It's like going through your closet and throwing out all the clothes that don't fit anymore. Only this time, it's your thoughts you're throwing away. And remember, this process takes time. You don't have to do it all at once. Start small. Prioritize your mental health and make time for yourself. Because when you clear out the clutter, you make room for clarity, creativity, and connection. All right, my growth seekers. Okay, you've heard the stories, you've heard the strategies. Now it's your turn. Now, what are those mental chains that are holding you back? What are the stories you've been telling yourself that need to be rewritten? I encourage you to act today. Write down one mental barrier you want to overcome and ask yourself, what would it look like if I let go of this belief? Remember, the first step toward freedom is awareness. The second step is acting. So let's start with small, consistent steps today. And if you're ready to dive deeper, I highly encourage you to check out syncsouls.mykajabi.com. It's the perfect resource to help you clear that mental clutter, align with your true purpose, and unlock your fullest potential. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. Thanks so much for tuning in to Where Growth and Greatness Align. Until next time, keep growing, keep shining, and keep showing up as your most authentic self. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share if this episode resonated with you. Let's spread this journey of self-growth and empowerment together. And don't forget, your best self is already inside of you. Sometimes you just need to clear the clutter to let them out. Catch you in the next episode. Peace.